Hi, this is a short video to go over the content in session 8. Um, and you'll see one of the things I'd posted as we started doing color grading was just to have a look at some examples of these from films or TV, but also to think about how we can describe what's going on so that we can then replicate that. So what you'll see here, for example, is a shot from Black Hawk Down, and then I put a few arrows up just kind of pointing at certain things. So you'll see I've pointed out that they've crushed the blacks. And what that means is that once something sort of moves into a shadowy area, you really lost all detail. So they've crushed that black area completely out, and you can see that with the chair and other parts of the image. These bars, they're just completely black. Really, there's no detail in there whatsoever. Same thing happens with the whites. The sky is completely crushed out, but again, any area that's sort of being hit by um, direct light, as it appears, is mostly washed out. Obviously, there's still detail on the ground, but you can see that the sky has lost detail. That part of the chair has no texture to it. So, like I said, we can look at an image and we can kind of break it down and say, okay, these are going on. We can also see the image itself appears to be quite heavily saturated. The colors are quite strong, and those colors are kind of broken down into two parts: green, and I've kind of put orange, but I'd say probably more of a yellow, really, isn't it? You can see that not only is the image green orange, but where do those, oh sorry, green and yellow, but where do those colors fall? So if you have a look, it's really the darker parts of the image that have the greens in them, and the brighter parts have the yellows. So, like I said, we can look at an image and kind of try to say, okay, what exactly is happening in regards to color. And then once we understand that, we can hopefully start to replicate that. And we've got other examples. But what I'll do is I'll quickly jump to Resolve. So I've grabbed an image from the Red website where you can download video clips to test. The link is on Moodle. So I just brought that in. Let's just drop that onto my timelines. Just a little shot of sort of a canal or river and some buildings. And if we jump to the color grader, so I'm not going to do any kind of editing on there. So I've got my scopes up because obviously first thing we generally do is try to adjust the exposure, the tonal range. Should I say, just get that right. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to quickly move into um, the creating the look that I like, that I want. And again, I'll use several nodes in order to do that. Now what I'm going to do is I could just start crushing the values here, and I guess this depends on your workflow within an application. How do you want to sort of work on this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a new serial node. So I've always got my original, which sort of has a correctly exposed image, and remember you can also label nodes. Yeah, so you can always sort of say what's going on. But I'm going to just quickly, like I said, within a few minutes, just try to jump through this as best I can for now. So I'm going to change that label and I'm going to say crushed values. Now, the thing is, I could, um, oops, I could, if I wanted to, crush the blacks and the whites separately, which would probably make more sense, really. Well, not make more sense. It just gives me more opportunity. If I change my mind or decide that I don't know why it doesn't let me type in there. There we go. Sorry. So yeah, it probably makes sense to crush the blacks and whites in separate nodes. That way, if I decide, "Ooh, actually, I want to make a change to the shadows, it's just one node, or I want to make a change to the highlights, it's just one node." Whereas if they're both together, then I have to get rid of both of them, even if there's only a problem in one. But I'm going to just do it in both. So what I'm going to do is, as I start to pull up the gain, remember, which affects the highlights, you'll see the detail in the sky will just completely wash out. Okay, I mean, there's a little bit of a gradient, so you can see it's darker over here. It might be a little bit difficult to tell. It's a lot brighter over here. So there's a little bit of blue and white there, but by crushing it, all that detail should disappear because it's hitting the top, its upper limit. It can't go anywhere else. So all of these values now, in fact, you can see on the waveform, sky is darker on the left, brighter on the right. Again, they're all going to become the same value because they're all being crushed. Then beneath that, you have the brighter parts of the buildings. So if I keep pushing that up a bit, I'll start to wash out detail there as well. So this is where it becomes quite important to not only use scopes, but to look at your image because you have to kind of decide how bright or white do you want it to be? And the other thing is it makes it look like it's under a lot harsher conditions, which I guess is the point of this shot, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite a harsh environment, and they're trying to get that across through the grade. So we can do that, and I can always come back to this, and I'll do the same if I change my mind about how much I want to do it. So again, there's loads of little bits of details in darker areas, and by just pulling those blacks down so they hit the bottom and then keep going, we're going to crush the detail out of that. So in other words, those shadows become a lot darker, and all of a sudden you've lost detail in a lot of those areas. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to add another node, and again, like I said, the point is to understand what's going on in here, so I'm replicating that. But I'd say that also applies to your work in general anyway. Okay, it's not about copying a look from something, it's just about having an idea of the look that you want before you go into grading. Okay, if you kind of go into the grade thinking let's move the controls around a bit and see what I can do, you're going to end up just sort of spending a lot of time uh, just tweaking things and saying, nah, that doesn't look right, I'll try something else, and tweaking other things. Whereas actually what you want is a clear idea of this is the look I'm after. Okay, so that's basically what we're gonna do here. We've got a clear idea of the look we want. So I've got another one, another node open now. And what I'm going to do is this time, let's try a few different tools as well. And again, the order might be different generally. I'm just trying to do this very quickly. I'm going to turn off, with our qualifier, I'm going to turn off the hue and saturation because I just want to use the luminance controls, because remember, this is a selection tool. And by adjusting it, you should see at some point, hopefully, oh, if I turn that on, you can see the sky is completely gone. It's not part of the selection. And as I move down, neither of those buildings. So I'm only selecting the darker parts of the image. So what that allows me to do is just select certain range of the image, and then what that means is any grading I now apply, okay, so if I want to add in little bits of green, those greens are only coming in to the darker parts of the image. They're not coming in to sort of affecting the brighter bits of the image at all. And then I could do the exact opposite, add another serial node. Sorry, I'm moving ahead now without sort of labeling them, but do the opposite this time and pull the low selection area out. So in other words, what's happening is if we click that little magic wand tool so we can see our selection again, as I go up, hopefully at some point, let me just go up, there we go, you can see it's kind of completely stopped selecting the darker parts of the image and it's only selecting the brighter elements. Okay, once I've kind of got to that bit, I can now grade just the brighter bit, so I'll use the gain this time instead. Let's turn that off so we can see the image, and I'll pull that towards perhaps the warmer yellows now. Okay, now what you'll find is that starting to get there, but it's not really working. So again, we have to assess in the image what's causing that. One of the things I would say are the reds in the image is just really strong. So what you'll find a lot of times, if you look at films that have been graded, if you were to see it before the grade as well, you'll probably find a lot of the set design and things like that were, certain colors were kind of kept out if they're not going to be part of the final look anyway. Yeah, so they try to design the scene anyway to work with the colors that they're going for in the final look, but that doesn't always happen, and so that's where grading takes over. So we'll add another node now, so we're just moving ahead. I'm running out of space here, so it's going to put it down there, and what I'm going to do is again use a qualifier, but this time rather than basing the selection by adjusting these values, I'm going to just click around the building instead and try to get a bit of a selection of the reds. Okay, so hopefully that's okay. Again, I'm trying to do this quite quickly, and now that I've got that, what I'm going to do is just turn the saturation down over here, and you'll see as I turn saturation down, it takes that color out that the buildings. Okay, so again, how much I want to do that. So I don't want to make the whole image look completely black and white, but I can kind of start to take some of those reds out, or at least reduce their strength a bit. Okay, so start to do that a bit. Maybe a little bit too much, but actually I'm going to leave it like that for a second because the sky feel isn't really working yet, even though we were adjusting the colors there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another node, and this time I'm going to go to my power window, and I'm just going to use a standard rectangle, and I'm just going to pull that across. The reason I kind of left the building as it is, even though I feel it's maybe washed out a little bit too much, is because I'm going to put a bit more color into it right now. So I'm going to just pull that down, and with that I'm going to add in the warmer colors. So I'm hoping that will kind of put a bit of color back into that building anyway. All right. So again, how strong I want to make that, maybe a little bit too much there. I can decide. Let's turn that power window off for a second. And you can see we're kind of starting to get there. I mean, to be fair, actually, let's go back to that power window. I probably want to extend that down a bit more, I think. Um, there we go. And actually, maybe I do want to just pull in some of those warmer colors a bit more. And again, like I said, at that point, I might go back and say, you know what, I think the whites need to be washed out a bit more. So I'll go back to my crushed values. Yeah, wash those out a little bit more and so on. And I'm kind of working my way through it. And I might say, you know what, that water just doesn't look green enough. So I'll make a separate selection for that as well. And I'm slowly building that image up. I'm trying to get to something that looks like what I wanted. And if you look across at some of these other images, so here you'll see they've got like this filter that's, or at least a filter look. So you can get some filters that are used, can fit onto a lens that are useful if you're shooting in very bright or bright conditions outside. So usually only filters around the top of the lens, and you can see they've kind of tried to create that look through a grade here. They've gone for an orange and teal look. So again, the water has that sort of teal color there. And you've got this very strong orange at the top, which then starts to fade out as it's going along, as it drops down to the bottom. So you've got these bolts which are looking very white here. This white-ish building here is very orange towards the top, but then less so as it moves down. So again, we can kind of see that and we're like, okay, we can see what they're trying to do, so we can replicate that. Same thing with this image here. They're bringing out certain colors, emphasizing again the oranges and the blues, and so that would probably mean a lot of secondary selections of elements and sort of really making those colors stronger. So like I said, have an idea of what it is you want to achieve before you go into the grade. Okay, and really try to understand not just, okay, I can see the look is green and blue, but where, like I said, are those values yet? Where do they sit in regards to shadows, midtones, highlights, things like that. So that when you're doing your grade, it's hopefully a lot easier to kind of follow through. Okay, hope that helped sort of explain this bit for you. Thanks.